Hello, happy Saturday morning. I thought you could spend the weekend with me this weekend as I cook all weekend. Did I film this video on 4th of July weekend? Yes, absolutely I did. Why am I sharing it with you now, even though it's like over a month later? Well, it's because I made Ina Garten's 4th of July weekend menu and I wanted to share it with you because we still have like a month or so left of summer, and I think this menu is perfect for any summer cookouts that you are having for the remainder of the year. I actually made this based on the menu that Ina posted on her Substack, so I will link all of the recipes down below, and I'm going to tell you how they all turned out. So we are starting off this weekend on Saturday morning, and I'm making ham steak and red-eye gravy with cheese grits. So one of the things that my husband Adam really loves is breakfast. It's like his favorite meal of the day. And so one of our, I guess, traditions is that a lot of times on the weekends, we will get up and I will cook breakfast because I love to cook breakfast and he loves to eat breakfast. This is a recipe that I've made several times, but I'm not sure that I've shared it with you all before. It's a recipe, well, the recipe for the ham and the red-eye gravy comes from America's Test Kitchen, so I can link that recipe down below, but I really like to make this with cheese grits. I think that the ham and the gravy that goes with it is perfect with that. And then I typically also make some like over easy eggs and toast on the side. So I started the liquid for the grits and then sauteed the ham steak in just a bit of oil. After the ham steak is browned, you just want to add some diced onion and just cook that through until the onion becomes a little bit soft and translucent. I do have to make a couple modifications to this gravy recipe when I make it because it's a little bit strong as is, but I'll mention that here in a bit. So once the onions are done sauteing, you want to add some butter and some flour and just kind of stir that around and cook it for about 3 to 4 minutes until you get that raw taste out of the flour. And then you're going to want to add some chicken broth. This is going to be the base for your gravy. And so once you kind of whisk in that butter and flour mixture into the chicken broth and the onions, you just want to kind of bring that to a simmer, and then add a couple of tablespoons or about a tablespoon of maple syrup. If you don't have maple syrup on hand, you could use brown sugar or white sugar or honey. You just need a little bit of sweetness to offset the saltiness and the espresso powder that we're going to add later. So for the grits, I cook these per the package directions, but then in order to make them cheese grits, I like to add in a combination of Velveeta cheese and shredded cheddar cheese. If you don't like Velveeta, that's totally fine, but I use Velveeta every so often in my cooking, so I don't know. It's probably like my Midwest roots. I think honestly Velveeta is just it melts better, right? And so like even when I make homemade mac and cheese, I always use a combination of Velveeta and shredded cheddar. So I added my Velveeta, shredded cheddar, a bit more butter, and some half and half. And at this point, you just want to kind of adjust the grits to your taste. You can add extra salt, pepper, more liquid if you feel like it needs it. And I always finish it with a little bit of hot sauce to taste. I did not really grow up eating grits. It's not a really common thing in the Midwest. I remember my sister eating like the packets of microwave grits for breakfast, but I was never a fan of them as a kid, but now as an adult, I love me some cheese grits. So to your red-eye gravy, what you're going to do is add a bit of espresso powder. This is quite strong, so I don't add as much as the recipe calls for. I also add some black pepper. And then at this point, you want to add just a few tablespoons of cold butter and just kind of whisk that through. You really do want to taste this. I ended up adding a bit more water because it was a little bit thick for me. But obviously, depending on the type of espresso powder that you use, you're going to need to adjust it to your tastes. For the eggs, I just melted some butter in a small skillet. I'm adding 2 eggs, making sure not to break the yolks, season those with salt and pepper. And then I just cook this over medium-low heat with a lid on it for a couple minutes just until the top is cooked through, but the yolks are still runny. All of my spatulas at this point were in the dishwasher, and so here I am struggling with this ridiculous wooden spatula to get these eggs out of the pan, but happy to say I was able to achieve that without breaking the yolks. For the ham, obviously this is a large portion, so it will feed probably 2 to 3 people, depending on, how much ham you want, but you can just cut it into portions and then serve it up on a plate with the red eye gravy over the top. I always put the grits in a little ramekin with your eggs and your buttered toast. I am the world's biggest fan of Walmart grocery delivery, and I do have Walmart Plus, and so it makes my life so much easier. I don't have to spend as much time at the grocery store. I went ahead and ordered my groceries for my cookout menu. Hola, I'm out here delivering some planner orders, so if you want yours, if you want your dinner done meal planner, I'll leave a link in the description box. I also have a coupon code, so get that. I texted the fam and I'm like, if you want a little treat, do you want Starbucks or Scooters? They said Scooters. The chokehold that the Scooters energy infusions, Red Bull infusions have on me probably needs to be studied or something, but they're so good. Okay, done. Order's in. I'm gonna go pick that up. It's hot as hell, man. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. To start out my menu, I am starting with Ina's famous flag cake. I was trying to think if I've made this exact recipe before, and I don't think I have. I feel like I've made a version of flag cake, but it wasn't this exact recipe. So this is a big recipe. So if you're not feeding a crowd, and actually I probably should have done this, I probably should have cut the recipe in half, but unfortunately I just made the whole cake because I was being overzealous. So you want to go ahead and cream 18 tablespoons of softened butter with 3 cups of sugar, and then after that creams together, then you want to add your eggs gradually, kind of one at a time. Obviously I'm using my KitchenAid mixer for this. Next, I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then I'm going to add 1 cup of sour cream. One thing about Ina is she loves her sour cream in baked goods, as do I, because Ina is the cooking goddess, and we all must follow her directions. This actually is a really delicious cake. Often I find that some recipes for homemade cakes can be very, dense and kind of dry, but this one was very, very good. Once I had the batter all mixed together, you can see that I prepped my sheet pan by spraying it with some nonstick cooking spray, putting down some parchment paper, and then spraying it again. You just want to kind of spread that batter out evenly. This is a very thick batter, so you just kind of want to make sure that you get it as even as possible before you pop it in the oven to bake. While that's baking, I'm going to start on the potato salad a la Julia Child. So if you guys have watched my videos for a while, you know that my OG potato salad recipe, here I am saying it like a true Midwesterner, potato salad. Yes, my OG potato salad recipe is actually from my grandma. I've made, I think, a few videos on it before. This one is a little bit more elevated. It includes more veggies and herbs, but this was still very, very good. I would definitely make it again. So I sliced up my little potatoes and went ahead and put those on the stove to boil in some salted water. And next I'm going to chop up all of the little veggies and accoutrements that go in there. So I finely diced some celery, some red onion, and then this also called for some cornichons. These are super hard for me to find where I live. There's only like one grocery store that carries them, and they're insanely expensive. They're like $12 a jar, but I did have I had enough for this recipe in the fridge. I'm also going to chop up some fresh dill. Also, another thing that annoys me about living where I live is that fresh herbs are super duper expensive. It's so annoying. This is why typically during the summer, I try to at least grow some of my own herbs on a pot on the porch, because I just can't I can't reconcile spending like $3 on a package of dill or basil or chives or whatever. Once the potatoes are done cooking, you just want to drain those. And then while they are still warm, put them in a bowl and pour that white wine vinegar over the top. This is exactly the same as my grandma's potato salad recipe. If you season those potatoes while they're hot with the vinegar, it will help that flavor absorb. I also used my mini Dash egg cooker, which I love for hard-boiled eggs, to hard boil some eggs because we're going to chop some up and put those over the top. I did boil extra eggs to make some egg salad. I don't need those all for the recipe. Next up for the dressing, I'm just adding some mayo in with all of those veggies and herbs and onions that I chopped up. I did opt to add a splash of half and half because that is something that my grandma does in her potato salad recipe, and I just find that it makes the dressing a little bit more loose. And obviously, as you combine those cooked potatoes with your dressing, those potatoes are going to soak up a lot of that moisture in the dressing, right? And so I do find that adding either a splash of half and half or milk really helps to keep that potato salad moist as it sits in the refrigerator. So I mixed everything up and made sure I tasted it and adjusted the seasoning. I'm going to pour that into a container. And then this recipe only calls for 2 hard-boiled eggs. So I'm just going to dice those up and then sprinkle them over the top, along with some of the reserved chopped chives and chopped dill. Like I said, I would definitely make this recipe again. It's definitely a more like fancy potato salad than the one I make, but it's delicious. We had tons of leftovers on this because my kids don't really love potato salad, so I packed it into containers and ate it for lunch the rest of the week. Okay, next up on Ina's menu is her fresh corn salad recipe. I have made this before and it's very good, so I was definitely excited about this. One caveat is that I did not appropriately follow the directions. You're actually supposed to boil or blanch your corn on the cob before you cut the kernels off of it, but I don't know what I was doing. I wasn't paying attention. So I'm going to show you a workaround. So the best way to cut corn off the cob is to invert a small bowl in a larger bowl and then put your ear of corn on top of it, and then just use a very sharp knife to cut the kernels off. And then once you get all of those into the bowl, they're going to go in the bowl. They're not going to fly everywhere. I went ahead and blanched the corn. It was at this point I realized that I had messed up. Anyway, whatever, we salvaged it. So I boiled a saucepan of salted water and blanched the corn for 3 minutes per the recipe directions. Then I'm going to start on the rest of the ingredients. So I'm dicing up some red onion. You could also use green onion, I feel like, or regular onion in this recipe if you wanted to. Adding some cider vinegar as well as some good olive oil. By the way, I do really love the Costa Rica brand of olive oil. It's very good. It's a bit expensive, and so I don't use it for cooking. I only use it in recipes like this where it's like in a vinaigrette or a salad, but it's very good quality olive oil. So I whisked that with the cider vinegar, salt, and pepper. Added my blanched corn in. And then at this point, it calls for a half a cup of fresh basil leaves. So I actually used this freeze-dried basil. I did not buy this purposefully. It was actually substituted in a grocery order that I had because I ordered fresh basil. And once again, being in a fresh herb food desert here in the Midwest, they substituted that, but it turned out great. So definitely love this recipe. I recommend it. I'm going to be making it over and over this summer as I have a plethora of fresh corn to use. So after I stuck that in the fridge, I returned to the flag cake. So here I am whipping up the cream cheese frosting. Very obviously traditional recipe for cream cheese frosting. It's just butter, cream cheese, some vanilla extract, and then some powdered sugar. So I'm using my whisk attachment in my KitchenAid to mix this up. I'm going to say again, this cake is huge. It makes a ton of cake and a ton of frosting, but if you're going to make the whole thing, you definitely need all of it. After the cake was cool, then I could go ahead and frost my cake. So I'm just using an offset spatula to make sure that I have a good layer of frosting all over the top of that cake. Definitely wait until your cake is completely cool to add the frosting. Otherwise, you will end up with a melted mess. Now I'm going to go ahead and decorate it. So I'm using fresh blueberries and raspberries to do this. This is very tedious, okay? So if you're going to make this recipe, just make sure that you set aside some time to painstakingly do this. I'm pretty sure I sped up this clip by like 6 7, maybe 8 times the the original speed. Also, you want to make sure that you choose raspberries that are not, bruised or broken, because they will kind of start to break down on the cake as they sit in that frosting. But this turned out really, really cute. And obviously we have Labor Day coming up. And so I think you could make this for that also. Definitely recommend this flag cake recipe. It made a ton, and I was able to refrigerate the leftovers, and we were able to have those throughout the week. Okay, so vegetable coleslaw. This was the next item on Ina's menu, and I gotta say, I do not care for this recipe. I prefer like a sweeter coleslaw, and so I went into this thinking like, oh, Ina's not gonna do me wrong. But honestly, I would not make this recipe as written again. I think that the dressing is extremely tangy and strong. It has a lot of Dijon mustard in it. It has cider vinegar. It has a ton of celery salt and celery seed in it. And it doesn't have enough sugar to balance it out. But anyway, it was a good try. Like I said, I won't make it again, or if I make it again, I will definitely add way more sugar. But this recipe calls for shredded carrots, white cabbage, red cabbage, and kale. And so I'm using my food processor with the grater attachment to shred the carrots and the cabbage, because this makes super quick work of it. If you like to cook, I definitely recommend getting a Cuisinart food processor. It is one of the tools in my kitchen that I use most frequently, and it is a pricey investment, but I just feel like it makes my life so much easier, especially when I'm doing stuff like this. So once I had the dressing made, I added the shredded carrots. I chopped up some kale, also added the green cabbage or the white cabbage, and lastly, I will add the red cabbage. Go ahead and toss this together. At this point, I was like tasting it, and I'm like, this is very strong. It's very strong, very salty, very vinegary, very celery forward, with all of those celery seeds and celery salt in it. To salvage this, I should have listened to my gut and added a bunch more sugar to it, but I didn't. Anyway, it was a good try, put everything in the dish and stuck that in the refrigerator. Like I said, we did not love this, so I definitely would not make it again, but you always have to try and see how things turn out. So also on Ina's menu were these smashed hamburgers with caramelized onions. I just opted to make plain burgers on the grill like I typically do when we grill out, because I'm really not a fan of caramelized onions on burgers. Honestly, Kira doesn't even really eat that much red meat, and Connor probably wouldn't like the caramelized onions. So like I said, I just went ahead and made burgers how I normally make them. So I smashed my patties between 2 sheets of wax paper, which is what I typically do. Definitely recommend this if you want to make sure that all of your patties are the same thickness. And then whenever I grill burgers, I just use Lowry seasoned salt and season them with that. Flatten them out, and then I'm just going to go ahead and stick these in the fridge until it's time for dinner. So here I am grilling my hot dogs and my hamburgers. I don't think I had the grill hot enough. Watch me absolutely massacre these freaking burgers as I try to flip them. I'm doing an awful job here. I should have probably let them cook a little bit more before I try to flip them, but whatever. We salvaged it. You can see here that I put them in a foil pan with some cheese on top. We have all of our burger toppings. I also grilled some hot dogs because, like I said, my daughter does not eat a lot of red meat, so I always make hot dogs when we grill out. I also made some baked beans. We have our corn salad, our potato salad, our slaw, and then I also put some chips out with that. Overall, this was a really delicious menu. So like I said, I'll link the recipes down below. Highly recommend you try this. Ina can really never do anything wrong. And also, please enjoy this footage of me borrowing my daughter's flag, who she's in her senior year of high school, and she's actually the captain of the color guard team this year. I'm super proud of her. Fun fact, I was also in color guard in high school, and no, I did not pressure her to be a part of it. I just think that it's super fun that she's doing the same thing that I was. I hope you enjoyed spending the weekend with me, and don't forget to grab your meal planner. I'll have that link link with the coupon code in the description box below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.